Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. In this video, we are doing the final Scourge of Ghyran review. The Games Workshop put out as the updates, if you don't know by now, for Soulblight Gravelords. You could say that they're last in the pile, but they are risen from the dead. Has this update done enough to change them? You just had a new battle scroll. You just had a new battle tome with loads of new stuff inside of it. So is this going to be enough? Let's dive in and find out. Just spoilers, TLDR. If you love zombies, you're going to be very, very excited. So let's go and have a look, shall we, at what is in this update. So the first thing you get are two new battle formations, and it's fair to say that they feel a little bit underwhelming when you read them. They are both battling against the battle formation, which gives your vampires +1 to cast or +1 to wound, which is a super solid buff for either of the two things that you're doing at that time. So it basically benefits you when you need it most, which is a pretty great buff. The Bacchanals of Blood is the other battle formation. The two new ones you get, the first one is Crit Masters. This gives you the ability Unhallowed Sight, which is once per turn army in your hero phase. You pick a friendly cursed Sepultura to be the target. The target has a ward save of 4+ until the start of your next turn. Now, this is underwhelming. I think that's fair to say. However, mechanics in your army do key off those terrain features, and Games Workshop have written the Soulblight Gravelords book thinking that those terrain features have enough impact that you do want to keep them more alive. So this is kind of like throwing good money after bad. They've said to themselves, we've wrote those Sepulturas, they're solid, the rules to use them work in the way that we intend or the way that they want to work. Let's give them a 4-up ward save. If nothing else, they're a good roadblock to a degree in that they're more difficult to kill, but I don't think you're going to trade any of your battle formations for this. The only thing I can think to say is maybe in some of the new battle tactics, keeping your terrain feature alive might be one of the steps of a battle tactic, at which point we revisit this and this really skyrockets and the stonks go up. I doubt it, though. The next one, the Skin Shifters. Oh dear. Gives you the ability, the Speed of Death, where once per turn in your army in your hero phase, you can pick a friendly infantry vampire hero to be the target. The target can move up to 12 inches. Let's fly when it does so. You cannot end that move in combat. Now, we're going to look at the new Sekar Warscroll in a minute. And actually, there's a really fun mechanic where you can move Sekar up, and then you can cast her Warscroll spell, and that's going to be super interesting for sure. There does seem to be some fringe edge cases for why you would maybe want to do this, but I don't think this is enough of a general buff to your army unless you're going for like an early turn one like gimmick trick that you're going to really want to take it. It's still an option. I'm sure if you are a Soulblight Gravelords fan and you want to let me know in the comments below, like, oh, Rob, this is the character I actually want to do it with, let me know. Think up some combos. I'd be super interested to know what you think. Next up, you've got 3 new heroic traits that you can pick for your army or for your heroes specifically. Now, the first one, Frightening Vitality, is an incredibly poorly worded ability, which means that when you benefit from a healing ability, you'll heal a minimum of 3. There are some cases like the Hunger where you would heal 2d3, but it still only allows you to heal a minimum of 3, not 3 for each of the 2d3s because it's 2 separate dice, right? It's also a passive, so you got to be careful with this in that it won't be able to benefit from itself. Not because it's a passive that stops you doing that, it's that passives you can't benefit from them more than once or whatever. It's not a rule of 1, but it is a core mechanic. You can't benefit from more than twice. So, or be affected by it twice, whatever the situation. So it doesn't mean that you can kind of like chain activate it, or at least my reading of it. And I run events all the time. If someone came up to me at the tables and say, hey, Rob, I want to be able to chain activate Frightening Vitality, I'd say, no, that doesn't work that way, or at least I don't read it to work that way. And then we could all go home and hopefully high five and everyone's happy. Or they'll probably carry on playing their game, actually. So there's a lot of conversation about Frightening Vitality, mainly because it's just worded very poorly, which is unfortunate because they've got this whole heal X mechanic. They've added a lot of this X mechanic into the game, which is not an X factor. Just going to say that. Draining the vitality from my life. Anyway, the next passive is Immortal Ego. Each phase, you can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, 1 save roll for this unit. If you get the right combat character, you're going to be super happy about this specific passive that you're going to be able to do. A Vengo Lord, as an example, I think is a good opportunity to get reroll 1 hit roll, wound roll, to make them just a little bit more punchy, but it doesn't affect many units, right? Like, and yesterday's example with Durthu, who's very punchy, I really enjoyed this. I don't think that there's anything necessarily inside of the Soulblight Gravelords roster that you're going to be able to take this on as a trait that I'm like, yeah, that's the one. One that I do really like, though, is a Wastrel and Vagabond, which is a passive. While friendly Deadwalkers, zombies, or Death Rattle skeletons are wholly within 12 inches of this unit, you can add 2 to run rolls for that unit, and you can add 3 inches to the distance this unit can move when it piles in. So a 6-inch pile in is very good, especially because what happens with zombies, and this is going to be relevant when we talk about the corpse car, if a zombie dies in combat and that zombie model is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, then you roll a dice on a 6-up, you're going to do a mortal. So getting as many, and you can take 40 zombies in a unit, so being able to make as many of those models be within 3 inches of enemy models is a really solid tactic to make sure you maximize the damage that comes from those zombies. In a moment, we'll look at the corpse cart. That's going to turn into a 5-up. So that means 2 to run rolls to make them faster, 3 inches that pile in. That means you're going to get a lot of those models onto and around enemy units. So it's very effective. It's also good for, I guess, skeletons, which I don't think is super solid. And zombies get a massive glow up in this. So 2 to the run rolls, so you can just move it all up into the midboard very, very early. Just makes it a little bit faster for grabbing objectives, taking that midboard, and then just hanging out. So that's very effective. So I think of the 3, a Wastrel and the Vagabond, especially with zombie builds, is going to be something we're going to see a lot of. Immortal Ego, if there's a right one to choose, then maybe. And then having a reliable heal, where it's always going to be 3 is nice. But I wouldn't take this just because the wording annoys me. So you have 2 new Warscrolls, 2 new alternative Warscrolls. You can still use the ones from your books. So your books are not invalidated in any way. It's a way of adding additional rules to your army, which I think is really nice. So there's 2. There's Sekar and there's a corpse cart. And Sekar's really strong. We'll talk about the corpse cart, though, because we were just talking about the zombies. I think that makes sense. So a corpse cart is only 80 points, which is ludicrous. And it's 7 health with only a 6-up save and a 6-up ward save and moves 4 inches. So I do recognize that it is fragile. Its combat output is not really that important. The important part is these 2 abilities. The Unholy Lodestone is you pick a friendly Deadwalker zombie unit within this unit's combat range to be the target in your hero phase. And until the start of your next turn, which is a really long time, while the target is wholly within 12 inches of this unit, its mindless ferocity ability inflicts mortal damage on rolls of 5 instead of 6. This is where, when a model dies within 3 inches, you pick an enemy unit within 3 inches, you roll dice. On a 6, you would do a mortal damage. Now, on a 5, you're going to do a mortal damage. So this would mean a unit of 40 zombies is, mathematically in combat about 13, 12, 13, 14, like mortal damage back into the enemy army. Now, this doesn't include the fact that you can obviously bring models back to that unit. You can also, once a unit of 40 die, you can bring 20 back as well, which is a Soulblight Gravelords mechanic. So there's a lot of math there, and they're super cheap. They're 140 points for 20. So 280 points to do like 12 to 15 mortal damage into the enemy army is super solid and very, very strong. And also then you've got Necromantic Goad down here. I don't know where my screen is. Necromantic Goad. Pick a friendly Deadwalker zombie unit that is wholly within 12 inches of this unit and not in combat with the target. The target can move 3 inches and it can move into combat. This is once per turn at the end of any turn. This is going to give you pseudo Murderlust into a Soulblight Gravelords army, which is crazy good. It being able to move into combat is amazing. That's so nice, setting up the next turn. Being able to run units and then just make that 3-inch move at the end and like lock down shooting units, make it so the enemy units have to retreat is very good. So overall, really powerful, really strong. And I think you're just going to see, unfortunately, a ton of zombies because you can have 2 units of 40 zombies and 2 corpse carts, and that's only going to be about 25% of your points in a Soulblight Gravelords army. That gives you a ton of options, and your opponent is going to look at that and think, I don't want to go in, kill all 40 zombies, and then take 12 or 14 mortal wounds back, which is most of a monster. It's a good amount of like Varangard, it's a good amount of Chosen, it's a good amount of anything really that's hitting them is probably going to die back if they can do the 40 damage, right? So it's super, super strong. Now the other Warscroll is Sekar. Now, Sekar has got, Sekar's a really interesting Warscroll. Again, super cheap, 220 points for a 2-cast wizard, right? That's a debuff piece. Now, I will recognize again, with only 6 health, a 3-up save, is pretty good, and a 6-up ward save, and a good combat profile with the holy profile of 5 attacks, damage 2, and then an additional 3 attacks, damage D3. I wouldn't necessarily describe her as a frontline combat piece, but does okay fighting if she gets caught up in it, which is, that's not what she's there for. But her job, and especially thinking about walls of zombies, is to make it so your opponent, it fails at multiple different points. She's got an ability called Allow Me to Remind You, where once per turn, as a reaction to your opponent declaring command for a visible enemy unit within 18 inches, you roll dice on a 5+, that command has no effect, it still counts as having been used, and command points spent to still make it be lost. Now, that's super good, because obviously bringing models back from the dead sometimes is a command ability. Reroll charges is a command ability where some people really want that to happen. So being able to, and that's going to be really key with battle tactics and the progression of battle tactics. People are going to be like, I really want to auto-run this unit 6 inches. Whatever it might be, a third of the time it's not going to work. Reducing your opponent's reliability to make it so that they don't do stuff and you do stuff, well, just so they don't do stuff, is really good. She's also got another ability called Lest You Forget, where once per battle round, as a reaction, your opponent declares a spell or a charge ability for a visible unit within 18 inches. You pick one of the dice for the charge roll or casting roll, and you turn that, you can make them re-roll it. That's very solid. That's very, very good. And it's going to be very, very effective. Ultimately, shutting down someone's ability to move around the board. Fail charge is super solid. Lastly, she's got a spell called Irresistible Demand, which is cast on 6 in your hero phase. You pick a visible enemy hero within 18 inches of this unit to be the target, then make a casting roll 2d6. You inflict d3 mortal damage on the target and each other enemy unit within 3 inches of the target. Now, this is going to key in, obviously, really, really well with the battle formation from earlier, where you're going to be able to move up 12 inches and then do this kind of AoE spread damage. Is it going to do enough damage that it's worth A, picking a battle formation and get this to happen? Probably not. But it's a really nice spell on a 2-cast wizard who's going to be able to put manifestations and other things on the board, while also, is a good D3 mortal spell as well. It's a great range. It's 18 inches. Casting each turn, it's a low casting value of 6. So even if you're doing magical intervention, it's cast on a 7. That's really solid, and that's a pretty effective amount of mortal damage. And if a unit is clumped up into too many of its own friends, which a lot of abilities are wholly within 12 inches, so you generally can get characters being quite close. That's a lot of potential, like chip damage you can do into an enemy army, which I think is pretty solid as well. So I think, if I'm being honest and thinking about it, and I've kind of said this, maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, but I'm trying not to be. I think if you're writing a Soulblight Gravelords list, if someone was to pop into the chat or someone was to ask me, hey, Rob, I'm writing a Soulblight Gravelords list, I'd be like, okay, what's your reason for not taking Sekar? Like, that's what I need to know. I think most people, and let me know if you're not a Soulblight Gravelords player or if you have multiple armies, if you would take either, I think you should, what was I going to say? You should ask if you would have this in any of your other armies. That's what I was going to say. Ask yourself if you're going to have this in any other armies, because the answer is probably yes, especially for the points cast. So I think it's good. So I really like it. I think it's very good. And that's it for the Soulblight Gravelords. And that's also it for all of the Scourge of Ghyran stuff. Obviously, we've got the Battle Tome, we have the Battle Tactics. And if just to let you know, I'll be live streaming Monday to Friday next week on Twitch, on Honest Wargamer Twitch, where we'll be doing GHB Week. I've never done this before. Normally, what I'll just do is I'll just review the General's Handbook. But this year, I'm doing something completely different. This year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to live stream for, I normally live stream for a while, but I'm going to live stream for several hours a day, attempting to really, not, when I say break it apart, I don't mean like, break the game. What I mean by that is work out the very best strategies and tips and tricks that I can give to each player in each army in that first kind of week. Set us up so we've got this, techie deep dives is a great way of putting it. So we can really start to understand and think about, the ways to play, the inconsistencies, which battle tactics are the best. Obviously, normally we find out that information at the as we do the Monday shows and we start to see what people are picking. But, trying to give some good advice to people, breaking some stuff down, should be really fun. I hope you've enjoyed all of these Scourge of Ghyran updates. If you do like what I do, then you can support me by joining Patreon, and you join a very active and very fun community in our Discord. Thanks for watching. See you soon.